AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Our host brings you the leading minds in AI, sharing their story, their success, and their advice. Focusing on fast-tracking you to the top, AI in Action cuts through the hype to help you kickstart your data science career. To listen to the latest AI in Action podcast, head over to www.alldus.com/podcast or subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Podcasts.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of the Alldus podcast. I'm your host, Ben Sparks. Today we're continuing on our ServiceNow series, speaking with some of the best and brightest ServiceNow and digital transformation leaders across the ecosystem. Today we're fortunate to be speaking to Todd Bashor, currently holds the position of Vice President at a fantastic company called NewRocket. Todd has worked with software solutions for over 20 years and has previously worked directly for ServiceNow. He's touched on pretty much every side of enterprise software solutions, and it's fair to say he and his team are hugely passionate around customer engagement and providing extraordinary user experience. I'll let Todd go into a little bit more of that because I'm sure he'll do a much better job than I will. But just to give you a high level, today Todd will be giving us insight into a range of topics, including NewRocket and how they are adding value to their customers, driving strategic change in digital transformation at an enterprise level, the interplay of user experience and AI, I can't wait for that one, and why NewRocket are all in with ServiceNow, and some of the key learns he's found out on the way with his multiple ServiceNow implementation. So Todd, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ben. It's great to be here.
Oh, great to have you. NewRocket are they're a company that have a probably unique focus considering some of the guests we've had on there, and I'm sure everyone is super intrigued to hear more about the company and the background. Would you mind giving us an overview of the organization?
Yeah, so NewRocket was really the brainchild of Nathan Firth, and Nathan had a long history in the kind of e-commerce space and using portals. Early on, he was at ServiceNow. He got a name for himself doing the first responsive version of ServiceNow's old CMS technology. And then he left to work with a partner. And then Fred Luddy reached out to him and said, hey, we're creating this new framework called Service Portal as the next big thing from the UI perspective. I want you to help out. And he was really instrumental in developing the framework. And his story is he thought it would be much more fun to build the portals than to maintain the product. And that's why he left ServiceNow to form NewRocket. He and I had a great relationship. I joined in, and the rest is, as they say, history. We have been here at NewRocket for over 4.5 years, and we really consider ourselves the employee experience company because out of all the things that we can do with ServiceNow, we've really chosen to focus on improving the employee experience using Service Portal, native mobile as that UI layer.
Awesome. And again, showing the power of the ecosystem and how it can connect people. I think that's a really nice story. So you mentioned, the experience side of ServiceNow. Tell us a little bit more about NewRocket and the value it brings to customers.
ServiceNow in general, it can do so much, and you can look at it from a suite of applications, and those by themselves provide a lot of value. You can look at it as a platform, the ability to create new solutions. And when you take all of that together, it's really providing that service layer for the organization. Every big company is going to have big anchor applications like their ERP, maybe their HR system. But as you're trying to coordinate work across the organization and even providing that service interface with the employees, with your customers, with your partners, you need a way to coordinate that. And that's where ServiceNow really comes in and providing that way to interface between the requesters of the service and the people fulfilling that service, the providers within the organization. And that's where Service Portal was really positioned in order to give a better user experience, an interface between those requesters and fulfillers. And what we've seen over the years is this evolution of starting with like a single department, IT or HR want to provide that nice interface. And we've moved into multi-department portals, and now more and more we're being asked to provide these intranets, which combine not only that service experience, but also that level of engagement. And then as we start enriching that experience, that extends out into mobile. So more and more our clients are asking us to extend that great user experience onto the mobile device, because quite honestly, more people are spending more time on their mobile devices. And we've just seen this tremendous growth and utilization of ServiceNow to get more value out of the platform.
Nice. And obviously a lot of what you talk about there, especially when people hear mobile and that user interface piece of it, were these topics front of mind pre-COVID, or have you seen a shift through 2020, or what's your views on that?
Yeah, at the beginning of the year when all this started, we weren't quite sure what was going to happen, and what we've seen is there are certainly big winners and big losers, but at least with our client base, everyone is still struggling to adapt. And luckily, ServiceNow is a great platform to allow them to do that. ServiceNow was very responsive in releasing some applications into the community to help with that. And what we've seen is it's just augmented that need to have a great user experience and a great interface between the service providers and the employees. The employees need that support as they're dealing with working from home and having to manage their children in school while they're trying to work, and having that ability to have a flexible way to manage those requests and be more responsive, get employees quick answers to the questions that they have. That's been really a significant shift, but in terms of like the growth trajectory, that's pretty much the same. Now, I do have to say that quite a few of our clients have specifically come to us and said, oh, one of the compelling reasons why we want to do this now is because we have more and more people asking about COVID-related information. How are we responding? What resources are available? And this was particularly at the beginning of the crisis, where we were just kind of scrambling to help people work from home and give them the resources they were looking for.
No, that makes complete sense. And obviously you're very customer facing yourself. When you're engaging with the C-suite, what are some of the top talking points, and maybe even, be as bold as say, like, how are you trying to educate sort of some of your customers?
When we talk to folks about ServiceNow, it's always been considered the system of action. And what that typically means is people go to ServiceNow, they interact with people using ServiceNow to get things done. And that's very clear with its origins in IT management and ticketing and those types of things. But more and more, we're also talking about using ServiceNow as a system of engagement. It's not a matter of just being responsive, but also how can those same service providers push information out into the business, make it more engaging, build community, and those types of initiatives. So that's the conversation that we're having at the highest level, is shifting even more from that system of action into the system of engagement. I would also say that when we talk about ServiceNow, you can't help but mention the fact that having a single data model provides such a significant advantage. In my career, particularly when I was at Peregrine early on, Peregrine's strategy for expanding and going from IT into asset management and facilities, they would acquire products and use integration technologies to just kind of synchronize data back and forth. And at the time I was responsible for doing that integration, it was really painful. And some of the other big vendors still kind of adopt that strategy. But with ServiceNow, having everything within the single data model, that just means that every time you add a new department, that you add a new feature, you're not just taking incremental advantage, it's almost exponential, because you're able to see that information, take advantage of it. You don't have to spend time integrating, synchronizing data because it's already there. And I can't tell you how many times we've been asked to do a custom application and we say, oh, well, that data is already in ServiceNow, so we can take advantage of it. And it not only gets us to market faster, the business sees the significant advantage. And that kind of rolls into another topic that comes up with our clients. They say, they talk about ServiceNow and they're like, well, we have this Tesla under the hood and we're driving it like a Pinto. You know, it's not, we're not getting enough out of it. We know it can do more, so how can you help us? And we just love those opportunities to say, hey, this is how you can squeeze even more power out of your existing investment. And in a lot of cases, you know, the cost of doing that is so incremental, it's really a no-brainer. So all of that really combines into such a compelling story when it comes to ServiceNow, being able to easily migrate from, you know, simple ticketing into running, you know, huge portions of your business on an existing investment.
And I think that's sometimes pretty easy to overlook, the existing investment piece and getting more out of it. That's a really, really interesting point, and one that we maybe haven't heard too much of. So that's really, really useful. Are there any kind of client case studies or, you know, anything that you'd like to share that may be good examples of that?
Yeah, top of mind, we're working with a big retailer right now, and they have, as you might expect, a number of different employee systems. They have an employee app for mobile access. They have an existing intranet. They have, I think, 5 other applications that employees interact with on a daily basis. And when they first approached ServiceNow and NewRocket, their desire was to start retiring and consolidating that onto ServiceNow. And then as they were doing that, further take advantage of the types of things that ServiceNow is offering, that NewRocket's offering. So the whole roadmap is about not only replacing those systems, but going well beyond what they're doing today and getting that rich ecosystem where you have employees contributing content, sharing information, and that decentralization of contribution just opens so many doors. And a lot of businesses that we work with, they started out with having everything very centralized, and they're beginning to see the power of pushing that out into the organization. So, you know, looking at a company like this retailer who's able to see the advantage, start working on incrementally absorbing those other applications into the ServiceNow platform, and then leveraging that for even more capability. It's just really inspiring to work with clients like that.
Indeed. And so when we're looking at sort of your experience in implementations, obviously you've done dozens of implementations, and I'm sure every single one of them went perfectly. You know, what are some of the key things if I'm a C-suite executive and I'm thinking about bringing either an enhancement or a new implementation? What are the key things that I should keep as front of mind?
Yeah, there's a few things that definitely come to mind. The first one is just overcomplication. We have a lot of clients where when we first start working with them, we realize that they've done a great job building out a catalog, for example, but it's maybe doesn't have the governance that it should. So there's a ton of categories and a ton of items, and they're really exposing their operating model instead of the user's mental model of the services that they need. And while they're thinking that they're getting some operational efficiency, there's overhead with all of that, and not just operational overhead, but also from the employee's perspective when they go to request a service. Having so many choices is not necessarily a good thing. So that overcomplication is definitely an issue, and particularly we see this with a lot of higher education clients where they're very interested in having a service portfolio, and they do have a very rich understanding of the services that they're offering, but then they're directly exposing that to the end users who don't understand the nuances of the service portfolio that they put together. And we have to educate them on the fact that you can separate that user-facing catalog from what you're using for reporting and operational purposes. So that would be the first thing. I'd say another big challenge is just recognizing where you are as an organization, what the organizational dynamics are driving what you can do at the moment. And some people call that the maturity of the organization, but we had a client recently who really was kind of questioning, well, how simple can we make the interface for the users? And the fact was that they were combining several different portals from several different organizations into the same interface. And with that, you have to recognize it's very hard to immediately simplify that interface. First, you need to merge things together, get people used to working together, and then you can start getting some metrics around what works and what doesn't, and then you can start simplifying. And it kind of sounds counterintuitive that you would maybe start with something more complex and then simplify it, but oftentimes that's what we have to do is find that balance on what the organization can absorb and then tweak it from there. Which kind of leads me to another point about understanding what metrics you're trying to drive. In all of our kickoffs, we talk about how we have to balance operational goals with the user goals. If we simply said, oh, we want to make the best user experience we can, that may actually cause operational problems as we're trying to execute against those things. Some people would say that the best user experience is completely white glove, and we're going to just call us up and we'll spend 30 minutes on the phone with you. And that's great, but can IT or another service provider really sustain that? So we have to be really clear about what metrics we're trying to influence, and then make sure that the user experience and the implementation are really driving those and supporting those metrics. And then the other thing that came to mind is around doing things that are going to have a negative upgrade impact. Our clients have definitely heard the drum banging about staying out of the box and not making customizations. Mm-hmm. In our mind, it's a little bit of a misnomer, and it leads to some unfortunate behavior. They've heard so many times, you got to stay out of the box, don't customize, that they're willing to live with a portal, for example, that's just not optimal for their organization. And what we found is there are ways to tailor the experience that aren't going to have an upgrade impact. But as soon as you start cloning certain widgets, as soon as you start making changes that fight against what ServiceNow is expecting you to do, that's where you're going to run into problems. So we're very consultative about where you can make those changes to make a positive impact on the user experience, but not have that negative impact on your upgrade.
Nice, makes complete sense, and it sounds like you've always got the customer front of mind there, which is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, obviously looking into your, magic crystal ball that you have, where do you see the future of the product? We know that sort of AI is becoming more prevalent, the product's becoming more complex. What are your views on, let's say, like the interplay between sort of user experience and AI?
For us at NewRocket, it's really about where should AI be applied to the overall user experience. That's the real key question, and there's some trend toward, well, we can just use AI for this, and we're just going to plug in a virtual agent, and that's going to solve all of our problems. And that's really not what we found. We still have to consider user preferences, the overall user experience. What's that going to be like? So, for example, take a virtual agent. So with a typical virtual agent, you may be able to have a virtual agent that can complete an entire form for you. That's great on a mobile device where maybe you don't want to sit there and peck on a keyboard as you're trying to fill out a long form. At the same time, if you're already at your desk and you can see the whole form and fill that out, the form might be a better user experience than the AI. So really determining when is the best place to engage that AI, how can it offload work from the operations side, when is it going to provide a better user experience? Those are really key questions that you always want to ask before you just immediately want to integrate that AI into the overall experience. But there are clear cases where it could make sense. For example, with AI-based ticket routing. If the AI is properly trained, then you could take some of that triage activity off of the service desk, for example, put that into the AI, and that reduces the overall resolution time. That's a great example. As long as, again, you're thinking about, oh, well, what happens when the AI miscategorizes? What are you going to do at that point? How reactive can you be? So our caution is always, if you're going to apply AI, ask some questions up front, and then after you've made that decision, continue to ask questions about, okay, well, what happens when the AI doesn't perform the way you want it to? What are the kind of escape hatches that you're giving the users? And then kind of a corollary to that is, as you think about AI, applying the same types of user research methods that we would do with a traditional design, that can work for AI as well. Finding out, okay, why are people interacting with this method? What are they most likely to want to do? That can help you target all of those implementation efforts and make sure that the AI investment is going to give you the results that you want. If you spend a ton of time implementing AI for something that happens, a small fraction of the time, I don't think that that's a very wise investment. Yeah, so I mean, that's certainly some of the ways that we're seeing AI interplay with the virtual agents, with some things on the back end, with some machine learning. But it's always, how does this integrate well with the overall user experience, and in what channels should that be engaged with?
Awesome. And, obviously, why do NewRocket, when we talk about ServiceNow specifically, why do NewRocket believe sort of ServiceNow is the ideal platform for company intranets and digital workplaces?
When we thought about this as we were moving into the intranet space, we came up with a few different areas. One is around the idea of coordinated engagement. Certainly there are intranet vendors out there that talk about an engagement layer, employee engagement. But with ServiceNow, because of the workflow behind it, it's not just about getting news out there. It's not just about providing a place where people can share ideas. It's about what can you do with that engagement at that point, and how can that inform your workflows? How can it trigger a workflow? So we're big into this idea of how can you go, once you get someone engaged, how can you then take it further and make their job easier, their day easier, have them get their task done quicker. And then as we start thinking more about just engagement, oftentimes with intranets, it's just this dump of data, and everyone has to kind of wade through and figure out, well, what's relevant to me. And that's one of the great things about ServiceNow is they have quite a few ways to target that communication and make sure that what someone's seeing on that intranet is the most relevant for them. With the catalog, there's user criteria. With knowledge, there's user criteria. With the HR module, there's this idea of campaigns, which is targeted content over time. So plenty of different ways that we can do that with ServiceNow. And then once you get that content out to them and you're targeting that communication, how can you make it actionable? So what is the call to action? It's not enough that you get it out there, because people aren't going to intranets to shop. They're not there, to spend half their day. They're usually there to get something done. And so we want to make sure that there's some action associated with that communication so they can accomplish the next step. And then ServiceNow in general, it's such an extensible platform that moving beyond the traditional things that you would encounter on an intranet, you can enable new types of interaction. You can get that custom capability into your intranet with a really minimal effort. And other intranet platforms just don't have that same degree of tailoring that you can do. So ServiceNow, just for a lot of reasons, provides all of the traditional things that you would see with a company intranet, while going way beyond that and allowing us to combine that service and customization aspect.
Awesome. Sounds so engaging, and I can definitely see how that's a benefit to an organization and the people within it. Todd, this has been really, really insightful. You've given us a lot of different perspective. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we say goodbye?
We're hiring.
Okay.
We have such a tremendous demand. We're looking for developers and just trying to make sure that we have the capacity we need to meet the demand. I'd say the other thing is we see employee experience as being just as important as ever. ServiceNow is recognizing this. NewRocket's here to help, and just the power of the ServiceNow platform and NewRocket's capabilities can help out anyone who's interested. So.
Awesome. And on that note, what kind of people would you love to be reached out from? Anyone that's just thinking like, hey, I'd love to be able to increase user experience. How do I do that? Or
Yeah, so we do still a range of different services and portals, from single department portals, multi-department intranets, mobile development. Even if you're just an IT department and you're not getting the results that you want out of your current portal, we can help with that. If you have an initiative to bring a bunch of departments together and provide that richer experience, we're there. And then for the companies that are ready for really the next level of their intranet, then we're definitely poised to help you with that.
Amazing. Sounds super exciting. Todd, thanks so much for taking the time to be on the show, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Cheers, mate.
Thanks. It was my pleasure.
AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Alldus offer an exec search program. Alldus can help you discover how data science and AI can transform your company. With our unrivaled network of C-suite executives and senior AI professionals, we offer retained search services across the US and Europe. Get the Alldus advantage. Become a member of the Alldus community and enjoy some of the following: AI meetups. Once a month, our community gathers to listen to some of the leading experts in the world of data science and AI. Our speakers come from all over the world, including Dublin, Boston, and Frankfurt. We also have our AI mentors. Our experts will provide mentoring to Alldus members. And don't forget our AI in Action podcast. Each week we have guests from all over the world talking us through their education, career, and more. Become an Alldus member and get the Alldus advantage. For more information and to sign up for our newsletter, log on to www.alldus.com. That's www.alldus.com. Alldus International, empowering through AI.